What if the largest desert on Earth isn't empty, but hiding entire worlds beneath it? Oceans, lost civilizations, even evidence of events powerful enough to rewrite history, buried under sand, waiting for someone to finally uncover the truth. Most people think they understand the Sahara, an endless ocean of sand, empty, silent, dead. I used to think that too, but the deeper I looked into it, the more that idea started to feel wrong. Because the Sahara isn't just a desert, it's a cover, a surface that hides something much older, much bigger, and far more unsettling than anything we've been taught. What if I told you that beneath those dunes, under millions of tons of burning sand, there are the remains of giant rivers that once cut across the land like veins? That entire ecosystems lived and died there, not millions, but just thousands of years ago? That civilizations may have risen, thrived, and vanished without leaving a clear trace. And here's the part that really stayed with me. The sand doesn't just bury things, it erases them. It smooths over time itself like nothing ever happened. That means the Sahara isn't empty. It's one of the most complete archives of hidden history on this planet. We just can't see it. For centuries, people have been drawn into this place chasing stories, lost cities made of gold, hidden worlds beneath the dunes, places where life somehow survives in the most impossible conditions. Most of those stories were dismissed as myths, and maybe that's what I believed at first too. But then, something changed. We stopped looking at the Sahara from the ground and started looking at it from above. Satellites, aerial imaging, space missions, and suddenly the desert started revealing things it had been hiding for thousands, sometimes millions, of years. Structures too large to understand from the surface, patterns too precise to ignore, evidence that something about this place doesn't fit the simple narrative of just sand. That's when a question started forming in my mind. What if the Sahara isn't empty because nothing ever happened there, but because everything that happened there was buried? Welcome to Hidden Truth Channel. If you're the kind of person who feels like there's always more beneath the surface, more than what we're told, more than what we see, then you're in the right place. And before we go any further, if this kind of journey into the unknown speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe. It helps this channel grow, and it gives me the chance to keep uncovering stories like this. Because what we're about to explore isn't just history, it's something closer to a pattern. The Sahara covers about 9 million square kilometers. To put that into perspective, it's almost the size of the entire United States. Now imagine all of that land acting like a giant vault, a place where time doesn't just pass, it gets locked away, layer by layer, year after year, until entire worlds disappear beneath it. And here's what unsettles me the most. We've always assumed we understand the Earth, that we know where life exists, where it doesn't, where history happened, and where nothing ever did. But what if we're wrong? What if some of the most important chapters of our planet's story are hidden in the very places we've ignored? That thought stayed with me. It didn't go away. So I started digging, not with tools, not with maps, but with questions. And the first answer I found didn't look natural at all. In fact, it looked like something was watching us. Something so massive, so precise, that you can only truly see it from space. And once you see it, you start to wonder if the Sahara has been hiding more than just history. And the moment I saw it for the first time, I realized this wasn't just another story buried in the sand. In 1965, astronauts aboard the Gemini mission were doing something fairly routine: photographing the Earth from orbit, scanning for geological patterns, mapping the surface. Nothing about that mission suggested they were about to stumble onto something that would challenge how we interpret an entire region of the planet. But as they passed over a remote part of Mauritania, something caught their attention. At first, it didn't make sense. Right in the middle of an otherwise flat, lifeless stretch of desert, there was a shape. Not random, not chaotic, but structured, deliberate. A massive formation made of perfectly spaced concentric circles nested inside one another like a target, or more accurately, like an eye. Today, it's known as the reshaped structure. But the first time I saw it, I understood immediately why people call it the Eye of the Sahara. It doesn't just sit there, it feels like it's staring back at you. And what makes it even more unsettling is its scale. It's about 40 kilometers across. You can't grasp something like that from the ground. For centuries, people walked across its ridges without ever realizing they were inside something extraordinary. From their perspective, it was just uneven terrain, low hills, nothing worth questioning. But from above, everything changes. The symmetry becomes impossible to ignore. And that's where the questions begin. Because when something looks that precise, that structured, the human mind does what it always does. It looks for intention. When the first images reached the public, theories spread almost instantly. And I'll admit, I felt that pull too, that instinct to believe there was something more behind it. One of the most persistent ideas was that this could be the remains of Atlantis. It sounds dramatic, almost cinematic. But when you look into it, the parallels are hard to dismiss entirely. Plato described Atlantis as a city built in concentric rings, alternating circles of land and water. A design so specific that it's difficult to ignore once you've seen the satellite images of the reshaped structure. The rings are there. He also wrote about mountains to the north and a wide plain to the south. Again, it lines up. Even the estimated size when translated into modern measurements comes surprisingly close. For a brief moment, I caught myself thinking something I didn't expect. What if this isn't coincidence? What if the desert didn't just bury landscapes, but entire civilizations? But that's the thing about mystery. It invites belief before it demands evidence. And eventually, the evidence arrives. Geologists went there, not with theories but with tools. They studied the rock layers, the mineral composition, the structure itself, not from a distance, but from within. And what they found didn't support Atlantis. It pointed to something else entirely. The Eye of the Sahara is not a city. It's the exposed core of a massive geological dome. Millions of years ago, molten rock began pushing upward beneath the Earth's surface, creating pressure that slowly lifted the layers above it. But the eruption never came. The magma cooled and hardened underground, leaving behind a hidden structure waiting to be revealed. Then came erosion. Wind, water, and time, working together over hundreds of millions of years, stripped away the upper layers of rock. And because different types of rock wear down at different rates, what remained formed these perfectly spaced rings. Hard layers stood their ground, softer ones vanished. What we see today isn't something that was built, it's something that was uncovered. A cross-section of Earth's history, exposed like an open wound. And standing there, if you could stand at its center, I imagine the feeling wouldn't be relief that it's just geology. It would be something closer to awe, because even when you understand it, it still doesn't feel accidental. It feels designed, and that's what stayed with me. Not the idea of Atlantis, but the realization that nature itself is capable of creating structures so precise, so overwhelming, that our first instinct is to assume intelligence behind them. And maybe that says more about us than it does about the desert. We want meaning, patterns, purpose, even in places where none were intended. But if the Eye of the Sahara taught me anything, it's this. Just because something isn't man-made, doesn't make it any less extraordinary. And yet, as strange as that formation is, it's still only part of the story. Because what I found next didn't just challenge how I see the desert. It challenged how I understand the history of life itself. And it began with something that absolutely shouldn't exist in a place like this: bones. And those bones shouldn't have been there. If you dropped me into the Sahara without context, I would expect silence, heat, and nothing but sand stretching endlessly in every direction. A place that feels disconnected from life itself. But then I imagine this moment. You're walking across that same desert. The air is dry, heavy, almost suffocating. The ground beneath your feet shifts with every step. There's no shade, no sound, just wind dragging grains of sand across a landscape that seems frozen in time. And then you stumble. At first, it doesn't seem important, just another uneven patch of ground, but something about it feels different, too smooth, too solid. So you brush away the sand, and what appears isn't stone, it's bone. Not small, not fragile, but massive. A vertebra the size of a log, embedded deep beneath the surface, and once you see it, you can't ignore it. You start digging, slowly at first, then with urgency. More bones emerge, a spine, ribs, a skull, long, narrow, lined with sharp, predatory teeth. At that moment, your mind tries to make sense of it. Dinosaur? Maybe. That would at least feel logical. But it's not. It's a whale, and not just one, hundreds. That's what Wadi al-Hitan, the Valley of the Whales, actually is. A place where the remains of ancient marine creatures are scattered across one of the driest regions on Earth. The first time I saw images of it, I couldn't reconcile what I was looking at. It felt like two completely different worlds had been forced into the same frame. Ocean life, trapped in a desert. It doesn't just challenge what you know, it forces you to question it. Because if whales are here, in the middle of the Sahara, then this place couldn't have always been what it is now. But the deeper you go into this discovery, the stranger it becomes. These aren't modern whales. They belong to an ancient species known as Basilosaurus, a predator that lived around 40 million years ago. Long, serpentine, built for speed and power in the water. This wasn't a gentle giant drifting through the ocean. It was something far more aggressive, something that hunted. But there's one detail that changes everything. These whales had legs, not symbolic, not partial. Real, physical hind limbs. Small, yes, too weak to support their bodies on land, but complete enough to reveal something undeniable. They came from land. That realization hit me harder than I expected, because it doesn't just explain evolution in a textbook sense. It makes it tangible. Real. You can see the transition frozen in bone, an animal caught between two worlds, no longer fully terrestrial, not yet what we recognize today. And now those remains are sitting in a desert, which raises a question that feels almost unsettling in its simplicity. If this used to be an ocean, what happened to it? The answer takes us back to a time when the world itself was arranged differently. Where the Sahara is now, there once existed a vast, warm body of water known as the Tethys Ocean. A shallow tropical sea filled with life. Mangrove forests lined its edges. Marine predators ruled its depths. It was a place of abundance, not absence. If you stood there back then, you wouldn't see sand. You'd see water stretching to the horizon. But the earth doesn't stay still. Continents shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but relentlessly, Africa began moving north, colliding with Europe. And as it did, the ocean floor started to rise. Water receded, coastlines vanished. What was once submerged became exposed. And over time, that exposed land dried, hardened, and transformed into something unrecognizable from its past: the Sahara. So when you walk across that desert today, you're not just walking on sand, you're walking on the remains of an ocean floor. And that thought stayed with me longer than I expected, because it means the world we see now isn't permanent. It's just a moment, a temporary state in a much longer story. Places that feel eternal can disappear, entire ecosystems can vanish. And what replaces them might give no obvious sign of what came before. But the ocean wasn't the last thing the Sahara lost, because much later, far closer to our own time, something else existed there, something human, something that, for a brief moment, turned the desert back into a place full of life. And that idea, that this desert was once alive, stayed with me, because it meant the next discovery wouldn't be about deep time or ancient oceans. It would be about us. There's a place hidden deep in the Sahara in southern Algeria called Tassili Najer. Getting there isn't simple. It's not a place you stumble into by accident. You have to go looking for it, crossing landscapes that feel almost unreal. Towers of sandstone, narrow canyons, rock formations shaped by wind into something that barely resembles Earth anymore. When I first saw images of it, it looked empty, just another harsh, isolated corner of the desert. But then I looked closer, because the walls of those canyons aren't blank. They're covered. Thousands upon thousands of paintings layered across time. Not rough sketches or abstract symbols, but detailed scenes full of movement, life, and intention. At first, I assumed they were symbolic, maybe spiritual representations distorted by imagination or ritual. But the more I looked, the harder it became to dismiss them that way. These weren't fantasies, they were observations. You see people herding cattle across open land, hunters chasing giraffes, elephants moving through what looks like grasslands, rhinos, hippos, animals that cannot survive without abundant water. And then there are the boats. Large, structured boats filled with people, clearly floating, not imagined, not symbolic, but functional. That was the moment it stopped feeling like art and started feeling like evidence, because there is no water there now. Not even close, just dry rock, sand, and silence stretching for hundreds of miles. So the question becomes impossible to avoid. If this is a Duarte, why are there records of a world that clearly wasn't? For a long time, people tried to explain it away. Hallucinations, misinterpretations, the human tendency to exaggerate. But science has a way of cutting through assumptions. Researchers began extracting samples from ancient lake beds, places that are now completely dry. They analyzed pollen trapped in the sediment, microscopic traces of plant life that once existed there. And what they found confirmed something that, at first, feels almost unreal. The Sahara isn't permanently a desert, it's part of a cycle. The Earth doesn't spin with perfect stability. It wobbles slightly over long periods of time, a motion known as precession, and that subtle shift changes the distribution of sunlight and rainfall across the planet. Roughly every 20,000 years, the pattern shifts. And during one of those periods, between about 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara transformed. Not gradually, not partially, completely. This place that we now associate with emptiness was once a vast, thriving savanna. Rivers cut across the land. Lakes expanded across what is now dry basin. One of them, Mega Lake Chad, was so large it rivaled entire inland seas. Grasslands stretched for thousands of kilometers. Animals moved freely, and humans didn't just survive there, they lived well. They built communities. They developed culture. They created art that would outlast them. For a moment in time, The Sahara wasn't a barrier, it was a center of life. And then, almost as suddenly as it began, it ended. The climate shifted again. Rainfall decreased, rivers thinned, then vanished. Lakes shrank into patches of mud, then disappeared entirely. Vegetation died off, the land hardened, and what was once a green world became something hostile. The paintings in Tassili begin to reflect that change. Animals become less common. Scenes grow more tense. There are signs of conflict. You can almost feel the pressure building, resources disappearing, survival becoming uncertain. People began to leave. They moved east toward one of the only water sources that remained reliable, the Nile. And some historians believe that this migration, this movement of people escaping a collapsing environment, played a role in shaping what would later become ancient Egyptian civilization. That idea stayed with me longer than I expected, because it reframes everything. Civilization doesn't just rise because conditions are perfect. Sometimes it rises because people are forced to adapt or disappear. But not everyone left. Some chose to stay behind, even as the desert advanced. And what they did next is something I still struggle to fully comprehend. There was a civilization known as the Garamantes. At first glance, they were dismissed. Ancient records describe them as nomadic, primitive. But modern imaging tells a different story. Beneath the sand, you can see the outlines of entire settlements, fortified towns, structured layouts, evidence of planning and organization. This wasn't survival, this was resistance. Because the one thing they didn't have was water. No rivers, no rain, nothing visible. So instead of leaving, they went underground. They carved thousands of kilometers of tunnels through rock, by hand. These tunnels, known as fogaras, tapped into ancient groundwater reserves buried deep beneath the desert. Water that had been stored there for thousands of years. They redirected it across vast distances, protecting it from evaporation, sustaining agriculture in a place that should not support it. It was an engineering achievement that feels almost modern in its thinking, and for a time, it worked. They grew crops, built cities, created a functioning society in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But there was a limit. The water they depended on wasn't being replenished. It was ancient, finite, and as their population grew, so did their demand. The tunnels had to go deeper, longer, more dangerous, until eventually, the system couldn't sustain itself. The water levels dropped, the infrastructure failed, and the desert took everything back. Their cities vanished beneath the sand, leaving behind only faint traces, visible now only because we've learned how to look again. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a story about the past. It felt like a pattern, a cycle of abundance, adaptation, and collapse. But even that wasn't the most extreme thing the Sahara has experienced, because the next piece of the puzzle doesn't unfold slowly over centuries. It happens in an instant. And that's what unsettled me most. The idea that while some worlds fade slowly, others disappear in a single moment. There's a detail hidden inside one of the most famous archaeological discoveries in history that I can't stop thinking about. When Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, most people focused on the gold, the masks, the sheer wealth of it all. But among those treasures was something small, almost easy to overlook, a carved scarab set into a piece of smooth yellow glass. At first glance, it doesn't seem extraordinary until you ask a simple question. Where did that glass come from? Because this isn't ordinary glass. To create something that pure, that clear, sand would have to be heated to nearly 2,000 degrees Celsius, and not gradually, but almost instantly. No natural fire could do that. No known ancient process could reach that level of heat. So what could? For a while, people reached for dramatic explanations. Lost technologies, unknown forces, Ideas that sound compelling, but don't hold up when you look closer. The real answer is quieter, but far more intense. Around 29 million years ago, an asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere over what is now the Sahara. But it never hit the ground. Instead, it exploded in the sky, an airburst. In that moment, the atmosphere itself became a weapon of heat. The energy released was so extreme that it radiated downward, instantly melting the surface of the desert. Not over hours, not over minutes, in seconds. Sand turned into liquid, and then just as quickly it cooled, solidifying into glass that would remain there for millions of years, waiting to be found. I tried to picture that moment, the sky suddenly brighter than anything you've ever seen. A flash of light so intense it feels like a second sun. Heat moving faster than you can react. The ground itself transforming beneath it. And then silence. No crater, no obvious scar, just evidence scattered across the desert that something unimaginable once happened there. It made me realize something I hadn't fully accepted before. Change doesn't always give you time to adapt. Sometimes it just arrives. But not everything hidden beneath the Sahara is a record of destruction. Some of it is survival. In the mid-20th century, while searching for oil beneath the Libyan desert, drilling teams found something unexpected: water. Not small pockets, not isolated reserves, but an immense underground system now known as the Nubian Aquifer. A hidden reservoir containing vast amounts of fresh water stored deep beneath the surface. Water that fell as rain thousands, even millions of years ago, during the same periods when the Sahara was green. It's ancient, older than anything we associate with modern civilization, and it's still there, being pumped, used, sustaining life in places where survival would otherwise be impossible. At first, it sounds like a miracle, a hidden gift beneath one of the harshest environments on Earth. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like something else. A memory. Because this water doesn't renew. There is no cycle bringing it back. What we're using now is what has been stored for ages, and once it's gone, there's nothing to replace it. Which means, in a way, we're not just using a resource. We're consuming time, and that's when everything started to connect for me. The buried rivers, the vanished ocean, the green world that turned to dust, the civilizations that adapted and collapsed. The moment the sky itself burned the desert into glass, the water hidden below waiting in silence for millions of years. The Sahara isn't empty, it's layered. A place where different versions of Earth still exist, stacked beneath one another, separated only by time. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not the mystery, not even the scale, but the realization that what feels permanent isn't. Land changes, climate shifts, life adapts or disappears, and we are not outside that process. We're part of it. Just another layer forming right now, whether we realize it or not. So when you look at a place that seems empty, lifeless, unimportant, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just waiting. Waiting for someone to ask the right question. When I step back and look at everything we've uncovered, one thought keeps returning to me. The Sahara isn't just a place, it's a timeline. Layer by layer, it holds the memory of worlds that once felt just as real and permanent as ours does today. Rivers that carved through the land as if they would never dry. Oceans filled with life that seemed endless. Civilizations that believed they had adapted, that they had found a way to survive no matter what came next. And yet, every one of those worlds disappeared. Not because they were weak, not because they failed in obvious ways, but because the conditions they depended on changed. Sometimes slowly, over thousands of years, sometimes in a single instant. And that's the part that feels most relevant to us now. Because we also live in a world that feels stable, predictable, built to last. We design systems, cities, technologies, believing they will carry us forward indefinitely. But the Sahara quietly reminds us of something different. Nothing is fixed, not the climate, not the land, not even the structures we build our lives around. So maybe the lesson isn't to fear change. Maybe it's to respect it, to understand that stability is temporary and that awareness, being able to see patterns, to adapt early, to question what we assume is permanent, is one of the most valuable things we have. In your own life, that might mean something simple: paying attention to the shifts around you, being flexible when circumstances change, not holding too tightly to the idea that things will always stay the same, because history shows us they won't. And sometimes the people who thrive aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who notice change before it becomes impossible to ignore. So I'm curious about your perspective. Do you think our world today is more stable than the past? Or are we just better at hiding the changes happening around us? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear how you see it, and I'm sure others would too. And if this journey made you think differently, even just a little, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps support the work here and allows me to keep exploring more of the hidden truths our world still holds.